For the rest of the world, this is a very difficult, unpleasant scandal. No other way to put it. For you two, this must be pretty unbearable. You know, you are so closely aligned as a family to R. Kelly. How are you dealing with all this furore that's been erupting, particularly since the release of this film?
We're dealing with it as best as possible, you know. I don't think that people have a clear understanding that we're dealing with two people here. There's R. Kelly, the persona, and then there's Robert, the person. Myself and my daughter, we're connected to Robert, the person. So it is very personal, him being my ex-husband and the father of my children. So it's difficult, but I think that it is needed. It's saving lives, it's changing lives, and we stand in the gap.
Drea, how would you describe as someone who was married to him for, what, for 13 years, was it? How would you describe Robert the person?
Well, in the beginning, Robert the person, he was funny. He had the best mama jokes ever. We started out as friends, and it evolved into a relationship. He was very broken. He shared intimate secrets with me about being abused as a child, dealing with illiteracy. Domestic violence was commonplace in his home. And the thing that drew us was the fact that my grandfather, who was a Baptist preacher, was the first time I ever saw a man put his hands on a woman. He was abusive to my grandmother. So fast forward, Robert and I are in an abusive relationship. It's not foreign to me. It's what I know. It's what I grew up in. It's what he grew up in. So being able to see the person, Robert, the broken part of him, and then there's this persona who portrays this confident, in control man, which is the total opposite of what he is.
But how do you feel, though, about the sheer magnitude of allegations, particularly involving very young girls in some cases, which have now bedeviled him? I know he's not been convicted of any criminal offence as yet, although it would appear that that may be coming sooner rather than later in terms of at least criminal charges. But how do you, you portray him in a very sympathetic light there, almost willing us to feel sorry for him in a way for the abuse he suffered or whatever.
Yeah.
But he seems to have perpetrated, I mean, there's so many allegations now. He seems to have perpetrated so much misery onto so many young women and young girls. How do you feel about that, and can you defend any of that?
Well, first, I'd like to say there's a difference between portraying sympathy, which I do not portray. I portray understanding because I know him in such a way because I was married to him. I'm a firm believer that just because you grew up in a household where abuse was prevalent and you were abused, it does not give you a free pass to be an abuser. So I want to make that very clear. It's devastating and it's hard because I wear two hats. I sit here as not only a survivor, but also the mother of his children. So it's very difficult for me. But I also know my position, and I know that coming forward brings validity to these young women and young girls' stories. And being a mother, I could not say anything after 10 years of my life going by and thinking I've made it out of the storm, and then here come more allegations, and they ring true to my life. And me and these women, we don't know each other. So how could we have the same stories about the same man and not know each other? So again, my story is coming from that of understanding because I know his background, but it also comes from standing as a survivor and an advocate.
And let me just ask you directly, do you believe all these women who've come forward? Do you believe that he is a serial abuser of women?
I believe that he is abusive. I can't confirm or deny these women's stories because, again, I have not lived it personally. All I can say is what rings true to my life. Every experience is different. I wasn't there when it happened to some of these women, but what I can say, what rings true to my life is what I can speak on. I don't know the other women's background, so I don't know if they grew up in a household where domestic violence and abuse was commonplace as to why they may have ended up or stayed as long as they did, or, I just can't speak to that. I can only speak to my truth, and my truth is what I survived. He was abusive to me, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, and as we stand today, he's financially abusing me. He stopped paying child support when I came forward in June of 2018. So, I can only speak to my story and what rings true to what I hear.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I feel that something has to be done.
Well, you're extremely eloquent, and it must be incredibly difficult for you. Let me bring in your daughter, Joann. Joann, ultimately, this is your dad. I know you haven't seen him for quite a while, but this is your father that we're all talking about in a very unpleasant manner. How do you feel about this, about your father, and about what's been going on?
Well, particularly about the situation that is happening in the blogs and, you know, everything, all the allegations that are going around, it's very hard to digest because, as a lot of people know, in the posts that I posted as far as my reaction to everything that's happening, that's still my father. It's a very hard situation to digest and even process because my heart is torn into two separate places. As my mother said, I don't want to confirm or deny anything that the women have been saying about my father or any of the rumors that have been going around throughout the years about my father. But as I said, I know him. He's my father. I grew up in that house to a certain extent. So I spent years in that house. And so it's very painful to see that all of these people are now being affected and have been affected by somebody who I do care about and have a very strenuous relationship with and is so close to me. So
well,
it's very rough.
Joann, you say that, I mean, do you still love your dad? Do you feel like you have to defend him? I know that you were reported as calling him a monster, but which you deny. Are you conflicted about your feelings about him? As a young woman, I think you're 21 years old now. A number of these allegations concern young teenage women. You would have grown up through those years hearing those allegations. What do you think of your dad right now?
Right now, I mean, like I said, I'm very torn because at the end of the day, it's still family. He's still my blood. So yes, I do still love my father, and that is something that I want people to understand. I never came out and said what I said to make people feel like I hate him or I'm bashing him, because that's not it. But you have to, at the end of the day, be responsible for your actions, and I had to do what was best for me, and my family had to do what was best for them. And if my father is a toxic person, then unfortunately we just have to love him from a distance. There's no love lost, but I just had to separate myself.
Does he try and contact you?
No.
When did you last see him?
Not at all. Honestly, it's been a few years since I've seen or spoken to him. I don't know exactly how long, but it's been a while.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you both joining us. This must be agony to talk about, and it's your family. You know, it's your ex-husband, it's your father. It's very, very difficult territory, this, obviously. I think you've spoken with great eloquence and grace today, and we greatly appreciate you taking the trouble to do that. And let's just hope that in the end, I guess, that justice is seen to be done wherever justice lies with this, because there are so many allegations. The film, I watched it, it's so devastating. You know, it's hard to believe that all these women are making it up, frankly. But I believe in due process. I believe that due process should apply to everyone, including R. Kelly, and let's just wait and see what happens and see where justice takes us. But thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We contacted R. Kelly's lawyer, who told us that Mr. Kelly loves all of his children and would love to see them. The lawyer said that Drea's allegations were fully investigated and determined to be unfounded. This is the statement, by the way, by Child Services and the police, and rejected by the judge during their divorce, and are without merit. Which is fine, but of course there are now myriad further allegations from myriad other women. So at some point, you add it all up and you don't come up with the word coincidence. So yes, we'll read that statement, but I think our viewers can make their own minds up from the compelling testimony we've just heard. But thank you both very much indeed again. We appreciate it.